Hi, my name is Carolina Gillen. I'm a Food52 resident, and today we're going to make a cheesy potato soup with peppered scallions in this gorgeous all-clad fusion tech stock pot. This recipe was inspired by a loaded potato soup, except we're making it vegetarian and we're topping it off with a lemony charred scallion topping, which is going to go so well with the rich and creamy soup. So let's get started. The first step in making this soup will be sauteing our onions. I'm going to start with a little bit of butter in our stock pot. Just let that get nice and sizzly, and then we're going to toss in the onions. So our butter has melted, it's starting to sizzle. Now it's time to add in our roughly chopped onions. Beautiful. And now we're just going to start to mix these. We want to cook them until they're slightly translucent. So for about 4 to 5 minutes, you just want to stir them from time to time and let them get nice and sweaty. I'm going to move on and start chopping some potatoes. As you can see, I already roughly chopped some of them, but I just wanted to show you how easy it is. Just cut a potato in half and cut that other half in half, like so. And then you just go over and roughly chop them as you go. Kind of make sure they're around the same size so that they cook evenly. This is what we're looking at. And now I'm ready to go in with the garlic. We have here some minced garlic. We're gonna toss it in, cook it for a minute or so. We don't want to put the garlic right away with the onions just because the garlic tends to burn faster. So that's why we started with the onions and we're gonna continue with the garlic. Next up, we're gonna add in the flour, which will be our thickener for the soup. If you wanna make this gluten-free, feel free to use cornstarch. Whenever you wanna thicken sauces or soups with flour, you always wanna toast the flour first just to get rid of that raw flour taste in your soup. Stir it for a couple of minutes to get it nice and toasty. Now we're gonna go in with our cubed potatoes. Just dump in there, like so. These are just some good old russet potatoes. I feel like they're a great base for this soup. Any potato you would have on hand would work. I think this would be really cool with some sweet potatoes in there as well, or some purple potatoes if you're feeling frisky. So now we're just coating the potatoes and all those starches in the stock pot, and we are ready for all the liquids that are gonna go in here. This all-clad stock pot is the perfect pot for this soup. Because it's 7 quarts, it's very easy to contain everything in there and not have half of the ingredients on the floor because you're stirring them and they're just like flying out, which is absolutely great. There's nothing worse than starting to make something and then realizing you don't have enough space for that. I'm gonna grab some vegetable stock in here and just slowly pour it in the pot. So, and one more liquid to go in, which is this wonderful creamy whole milk. This will add a lot of richness to this dish. You could totally substitute this with some non-dairy milk if you feel like it. I think the whole milk adds like a lot of richness to it, so I wouldn't necessarily do that, but you can do that if you want to. And last but not least, we're gonna add in our herbs. We have rosemary and thyme. It'll just add like a deep, robust, herby flavor to our soup. And now we're gonna bring everything to a boil and simmer it for 25 to 30 minutes or until the potatoes are fully cooked. While this soup is simmering away, we're gonna take care of our delicious charred scallion topping. We're gonna start with a skillet on high heat, and then I'm gonna bring in the scallions. We have 20 of them. We're just gonna put them in here, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna coat them in olive oil. So I'm just pouring about a couple of tablespoons of olive oil, and I'm just coating them in here. Again, we are on high heat, so things will get nice and smoky. You don't wanna move the scallions too much in the skillet. You want like a high surface contact so that they're getting nicely and evenly charred. We've been charring our scallions for the past 5-ish minutes. I'm gonna flip a couple of them so you can see. The reason I decided to char them whole was because it's much easier to do this rather than doing it with like finely chopped slices of scallions, you get a much larger surface contact. We're just flipping them away, no rules anymore. Some bits are darker, some bits are lighter. It's all about that contrast in flavors. And now we're gonna give them a few more moments in the pan. We're gonna char them on the other side, then we're gonna take them out and finally chop them and then get back to the skillet. So our scallions are ready. I'm about to chop them, but in the meantime, we're gonna brown a whole stick of butter. And hear me out. This is a loaded potato-inspired soup. I'm giving up the bacon, but I'm not giving up the butter. So we're gonna brown a whole stick of butter while we're chopping the scallions. The scallions had a little bit of time to cool off, so they're easier to hold and chop. All I'm doing here is a rough chop. I'm looking for like evenly sliced pieces, but nothing too crazy even. I'm kind of looking for like a chimichurri texture, so I don't want these extra fine, but I don't want them extra big either. Kind of like an oily paste type thing. If you see any bigger pieces like this one, just cut it in half. In the meantime, we're gonna brown the butter. This will pair really, really well with the cheesiness of the dish. So you don't have like raw butter over a cheesy potato soup. You have like a deeper, darker flavor in there. So we're just gonna give this a little bit of time. We're looking for like a darker golden color, and then we can go in with our beautiful scallions. So our butter is almost there. It's almost fully brown. Now it's time to add the scallions. You could also add the scallions and then add the butter. It's really up to you. You're just tossing them in there, just like that. Do some of that. Next up, we're going in with the lemon zest and lemon juice. We're gonna start zesting this. Whenever you zest lemon, make sure you're constantly rotating it and never like going too hard on one spot, just because you don't wanna get to the pith. That's the bitter part. The yellow part is where all the oils and beautiful aromas are at. So simply do this. We're looking for about a couple of teaspoons of lemon zest, but again, we're not measuring that. It's very eyeballable. Eyeballable, is that even a word? I'm gonna cut my lemon in half. Clean hands, clean lemon. We're just gonna catch the seeds of the lemon with our hand. You could also use a juicer. It's really up to you. The lemon juice will bring a lot of zestiness and brightness to this topping. We're just mixing those in. We're currently on low heat. You don't want to go higher than this. The butter is already toasted. The scallions are already charred. You don't want to burn this even further, so be careful with that. Now that we're almost done, I'm gonna go in with my freshly cracked black pepper. You want to go for like a coarse texture. So I'm just dumping in that in there and just mixing it in. And the warmth of the toasted butter will toast the black pepper. And last but not least, we're gonna go in with a generous pinch of salt, just like that. You can really season to taste, but you don't wanna under season because there's so much richness and decadence and butteriness in this topping. You really wanna balance it out with something savory, like salt. So now that our topping is done, it's time to take our soup to the final level. The potatoes are fully cooked, they're nice and tender. I'm gonna fish out the herbs. They left all their flavor in there. We don't need to blend them in the soup or anything. So we're just gonna set them aside. Thank you, herbs. If you have like a couple of leaves here and there of thyme or anything, don't worry about them. You can leave them in there. We just don't want like a whole stem. So now we're gonna scoop out a few potatoes just to bring more texture to our soup. We're gonna blend this whole thing and then add the potatoes back. So save some chunks in here. I'm simply scooping them out in a bowl. The paprika and the cayenne will add a lot of color to our dish. I'm gonna add in the Parm cheese, and then I have some sharp white cheddar cheese going in. Some more salt. Next up, in order to get our soup nice and smooth, I'm gonna use an immersion blender. Whenever you insert an immersion blender in a dish, make sure it's fully sunk and it's not like halfway up, because then you're just gonna end up spilling and throwing a bunch of stuff out the pan. So just a heads up. So our soup is nice and ready, it's smooth, it's rich, it's creamy, it looks gorgeous. I'm simply gonna toss them, same slotted spoon, it doesn't really matter. Just add them in there, and now we're gonna mix. You can give them a little crush with the back of your spoon. The reason we're adding back the potatoes is just to give this a little bit more texture. We're adding some chunks in there. You know, it's not just like a cream soup. So we mix in the potatoes. This looks amazing and it smells amazing. I can also smell the brown butter from here. This stock pot is still very gorgeous. It's one of those pots you could just like put on a table and serve the soup. It's that gorgeous. We're just pouring this in a bowl. Beautiful. We're gonna garnish this with some creme fraiche, which is essentially a cultured cream. You could totally use sour cream instead, but if you can get your hands on this, please do, because it's absolutely divine. Just add in a nice swirl, maybe a couple swirls. Beautiful. A pinch of cayenne, and last but not least, the peppered scallion topping with all the deliciousness in there. Swirl this one over the soup as well. Something like this. Beautiful. And now, finally, my favorite part, we're gonna taste this amazingness. I'm gonna give them a nice swirl, give all those toppings, the creme fraiche, the scallions, and the cayenne. Cheers. It's amazing. It comes together in almost no time and it feels very luxurious. This is much more luxurious than like your classic loaded potato soup. Then the pepper scallion topping is just zesty and bright and slightly spicy, which is like the perfect balance to all the decadence happening in this bowl. It's warming, it's comforting, and it's everything I want in a bowl. So I really hope you give this a go. You can find the full recipe on food52.com.